Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started. See if some others join us as we move along here. So again, thank you all for attending the webinar. We're going to talk about our Certificate in Cyber Operations program kicking off on 24 June. And this program falls under the Cybersecurity Academy here at UMBC Training Centers. And I am Homer Minnick, the director of the Cybersecurity Academy. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, looks like everybody can hear just fine. So we're going to go through a bit of a slideshow presentation quickly, and then I will take questions as far as details of the program, other information that you may require, and then we are probably going to be, after the webinar, sending an email to the participants and having something of an open question and answer session here in our facility for anybody that would like to come in and get some additional information. Program. Workforce development from government, from industry regarding the need for cybersecurity professionals. So some of those estimates just in the local area, in the Baltimore and DC area, are around 13,000 positions. So there's significant numbers. They're across a variety of different types of disciplines, all with a security focus. And the training program that we put together here addresses the kind of the common core of IT and cybersecurity skills necessary to perform in a variety of different positions, both in government and industry. And we'll talk about the details of that. One of the reasons that we're doing this is kind of a rapid, sort of a rapid workforce professionalization or workforce preparation program is because of the difficulties for higher education. So we've taken input from a variety of outside organizations. We work closely with the military and Department of Defense, other government agencies. We work with industry, a variety of corporate organizations, different professional associations, and of course being part of UMBC, we work with the various departments on campus and have come together to discuss what should be kind of that common training. What are the common skills that are required? So that's kind of where the information has come from that we're basing the program on. The components of the Cybersecurity Academy. So screening and selection, we'll talk about that briefly. The program itself it's intense. It's something of an accelerated program because there's a lot of information that's going to be taught in a variety of different topics. And there's a core of technical training, which will be common across the Certificate in Cyber Operations, as well as some other certificates that we are anticipating bringing online at a later time. And then there's specialization, which is specific to cyber operations. We'll get into the differences of those in a few minutes. There's also a component where we work with the participants to get them internships so that you can have some practical application in a real-world environment, practicing the things that you've learned here. And some assistance with matchmaking, putting you in touch with potential employers. So the screening and selection process, we look at, it's a whole person approach. So we look at all aspects of you as an individual. There's a pre-application on our website on the page that deals with the certificate in cyber operations, and it takes a bit of information about your prior education, your work history, as well as your interests, hobbies, those sorts of things that may be applicable. A bit about how you think and how you approach problem solving, that sort of thing. Part of that also, we're looking for what your motivation is. Do you have a passion for this field? Are you taking initiative on this to as a career changer, or are you looking to enhance your skills? So we ask some questions that kind of help us determine what your motivation is. And speaking of that, passion and initiative in the field of cybersecurity are an absolute must. You've got to be engaged in this. You've got to be willing to do self-study, to read the tech blogs, to stay current with the technologies. There's so much, and it's such a fast-paced discipline that you really have to have that passion and initiative just to keep up. We'll review that. We'll have you send in unofficial transcripts and those sorts of things, and then we will have you come in for those that we, after we review that, we'll invite people to come in for a series of assessments. If you know something about the field a little bit or you've had some training, then we'll do some knowledge assessments to see where you are currently. If you have not, then we'll go straight into aptitude assessments, which help us determine your ability to learn in the variety of topics that you'll be exposed to during the program. We'll do also a series of background checks, both for criminal background and credit checks, depending on how it is that you're intending to finance the program. And then there's an in-person interview process as well, and that's really more of a question and answer. You're getting a chance to talk with us and find out, answer any additional questions you might have about the program, us to get a feel for you as a person, as a candidate, just so we're, a bit more familiar with each other. So the core technical training, there are some areas here that are, like I say, they're common. It doesn't matter whether somebody is doing kind of an IT role, if they're doing a cybersecurity role from a defensive perspective, or if they're doing like penetration testing or red teaming, if they're kind of in the government or military space. And some of those common things are familiarity with networking, familiarity with Linux, familiarity with Windows. And while there's no specific Windows training in the program, there are aspects of it where we will teach pieces of it throughout. There's no discrete course that just covers Windows, though, like there are for many of the other topics. But we're teaching a fundamentals. So for people who are new to these concepts, we're teaching like Linux fundamentals, which is the user level. How does a user interact with the operating system? And then we're teaching an entry level or a very basic level of system administration. How do you do basic administrative tasks on Linux? As far as networking goes, we're going to teach you, the basics of TCP/IP and how networking works, how data, how data is interchanged between or transmitted between devices on a network. And then we're going to get into Cisco from a network administration, kind of a CCNA level of training to teach you how routing and switching works. So in addition to these topics, we're going to teach you some hardware and computer architecture. We're going to teach the basics of network security and information assurance, so the fundamentals, terminology, concepts, definitions. For some people this is, or for most people, this is going to be their first exposure to that, where they're actually really getting some definition of what those terms and concepts are all about. We'll get into an overview of a penetration testing methodology. So what is the process by which a penetration tester does what they do for organizations? Because they're simulating an attacker. So we're going to teach you the steps that an attacker would take while weaving in the ethical nature of that, and how you can do that sort of activity on behalf of an organization in a lawful manner. And many organizations actually have requirements to have penetration tests done against their networks to assure that they are implementing best practices, to find flaws before attackers do, that sort of thing. And it introduces you to some of the tools that are used to perform that function. Throughout, there will be assessments in each course, and there will be some comprehensive lab exercises which tie together things that you've learned in multiple courses, and require you to bring together multiple skills to perform some higher level functions. Now, during this portion of the training, there are 4 industry certifications that you'll be prepared for and that you'll get vouchers for. And they are Network Plus, Security Plus, Cisco Certified Network Associate, and Certified Ethical Hacker. What's good about this is, one, you have those technical certs in hand, but you also, for anyone that's looking to go to work in, for the federal government or for a defense contractor potentially that supports them, you meet what's called 8570, DoD Directive 8570 certification requirements, which are certifications that they've tied to particular positions. So you would walk in the door with those certifications when you're going to talk to someone about potential employment. After the core technical training, it branches off into some specialization training. So in this case, we're going to talk about Certificate in Cyber Operations, which is the one that we're having our inaugural offering on. And I say inaugural, now the program put together as it is a new offering. Of the 14 classroom weeks of training of this program, 10 weeks of this have been trained for many years for elements of DoD, preparing them for positions, for cybersecurity positions. So it's the additional 4 weeks of content that is relatively new, but it's based on some additional follow-on training that those DoD elements have gone to, and things that they're trained in specific to their jobs. So we're kind of taking that and modeling an additional 4 weeks of training to prepare for those aspects. So really the core technical piece is something that has been run many times over the past several years. The other certificate here, the Certificate in Cyber Development, is completely different, and it has a completely different preparatory training program. So the Certificate in Cyber Development is all about programming, so it's a kind of a software engineering certificate, and we're not going to go into any depth about it. So the additional 4 weeks that I mentioned that are specific to the Certificate in Cyber Operations are at the bottom of this slide. And so there is, whereas before you'd gotten kind of an introduction, very foundational information about penetration testing methodology, there is a very lab intensive, very hands-on penetration testing methodology component to this, where those things that you learned about conceptually and you learned some of the tools and you got a bit of exposure to it, this one is using that and actually performing those functions so that you get familiar with them, and you start to learn the skill to be able to perform penetration testing as a job function. You also will cover some programming in Python and learning how to do scripting with that. And the reason for that is that as you're doing a penetration test, you're gathering a great amount of data, a huge amount of data. So we're going to teach you how to organize that data, and how to use that data for some useful purpose. So that's the data analysis piece. Along with that, those who do penetration testing for organizations will come across malware. They'll be on an organization's machine that they have authorization to be on, and they'll discover that there's something else there. So we're going to teach you the basics of determining, if you come across malware, how to recognize it first, and how to determine its basic capabilities so you can inform that customer, hey, you've got something on your machine, and it is network aware, and it has the ability to do keystroke logging, or it has the ability to, encrypt data and exfiltrate it from a network, those sorts of things. Basic, not reverse engineering, but being able to look at a variety of different things within a system to determine capabilities. So that's a very quick brush of what's actually included in the certificate. So some of the questions that have come up is, why is this right for me? Is this right for me? Why should I attend? The Cybersecurity Academy is designed to grow someone who potentially has no knowledge in the fields of IT or cybersecurity, that is just a beginner, and to provide a natural progression of comprehensive skill in the field of cybersecurity. And again, it can apply across many different disciplines. This particular program is focused on cyber operations or penetration testing activities, but it's just as useful for someone doing network defense to understand this is what attackers do, this is how they do it, this is some of the tools and techniques that they use. If you've practiced those things, then you're going to know what to look for in your own networks. So it's something that is definitely applicable in outside of just penetration testing. Now, one of the core things about the way that we approach any training here is we're teaching the theory. So in this case, we're teaching the theory behind the technologies, and then we are helping to set that knowledge through the hands-on practical exercises. So the labs, the cumulative exercises where you're pulling multiple skills together, all of that is so that you really understand and are able to start tying things together from a variety of different disciplines. And then earlier in this, I didn't cover it necessarily, but this is a very multidisciplinary field. You've got to be able to bring in administration skills. You got to be able to bring in information assurance skills. You got to be able to understand policy and all of that. So we'll talk about a variety of those things and allow you to grow, I say, through to build one skill upon another until the point where you're able to perform an entry-level function in these positions. So, this is designed to produce the right balance between the theory and application. Having one without the other in any situation is typically not the best, the best recipe for success. If you only know theory but you've never actually performed a function, you're somewhat limited in your abilities. If you've only learned a particular tool or a particular piece of software, but you don't understand, what's actually going on under the hood with that, or what that tool is doing for you, then you're limited by what the tool's capabilities are. And if the tool doesn't work, then you don't understand how to troubleshoot or how to, work through it manually sometimes to get to where it is that you're trying to get. So, we bring in the problem solving. We bring in, the ability to, there are many things that you can do as a penetration tester. We bring in kind of the risk assessment, risk management piece as we go through to help you determine, I can do this, but should I? And the thought processes that go behind it. Again, I mentioned that we spoke with government and corporate entities, and in order to determine what content should be included. So the the skills that are in this program are the things that have been identified as common areas where people need training, they need education and practical exercise in order to be able to perform these missions. And again, we train heavily through lab-intensive exercises because we want you to actually do these functions. We want you to be comfortable when you leave here that you can perform these functions. And we want any potential employers or those who would look at you as an intern to know that you've done some of this in a lab environment already. So where to go from here? So the application process, like I mentioned, there's a pre-application, which is the first step, and it is on our website, and the URL is there on the screen. We also have you send an unofficial transcript to us, and also not listed here, but we also request a resume so that we can take a look at you, do a screening of that, and then selected individuals will be invited in to take the assessments, whether it be knowledge or background or aptitude assessments. We will ask for some letters of recommendation and then official transcripts, provided that everything looks good through the assessment phase. Have people come in for an in-person interview, and then we'll talk about the variety of different ways that the program can be paid for. We'll get some releases to be able to do the background checks and that sort of thing. And then during the program, throughout, we have a couple of times scheduled where partner organizations can come in and talk with you. So you can get to meet them, they can get to meet you, and see where the good matches seem to be, so that they can talk to you about internship opportunities and or positions that they have available. And then throughout the program, and for a decent amount of time after the program, we want feedback. We want to know that the program is meeting the mark, that it's covering the right skills, enough of them. Anything that's there that shouldn't be, we'd like to hear some feedback about that. Anything that's not there that needs to be added, we want to hear about that too. And just to know how it is continuing to go on about preparing people for positions. And things change over time as well. So getting that feedback to go, hey, this is more current, or this is more in demand now than when I went through the program. That sort of feedback will be important to us. So at this point, I will take questions. And if you would just type those in the text or in the chat box, then I can answer those to the group verbally. So we have a question from Friday that says, so what are the starting salaries someone should expect with a certificate in cybersecurity? It really depends. It depends on what industry that you're working in. Cybersecurity is across all other disciplines, as are probably aware. So it depends on whether you're working corporate world, whether you're government, whether you're working for a defense contractor, whether there's a clearance involved. It's really difficult to say. The thing that I would recommend to you is the Department of Labor website, where you can go in and you can research by industry, by specialty, for the state of Maryland or any other state in the country, to see kind of what the range of salaries are. Ruth asked a question and said, came in late and not sure if you mentioned it, but is this a part-time study? It is not. It is a full-time study. It is a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 full-time program. starting in June, wrapping up in September. So Haley asked, at what point in your undergraduate education should you apply for this program? Well, that depends. I mean, it's the sort of thing that could potentially, well, it wouldn't fit in a summertime. And really, you know, the degree programs, the employers today are saying, we want someone that has a degree, if we can get them. We want someone that has experience. We want someone that has, you know, certifications. We want someone that has, you know, has training, like hands-on practical skills training in particular things. So probably, you know, the best thing that I could recommend was, you know, immediately after graduation and prior to going into the workforce, while you're kind of still in that study mode. Cost of the program, someone asked. So this initial offering of the certificate program, the cost is $14,995. If you go on the website, it has some information there about that and what's required as far as an upfront payment on the part of the student. And then there are payment there are payment plans where the remainder can be paid over a period of time after you've gotten a job, you've completed the program, you've gotten a job in, you know, in the cyber field, that you have a period of time to pay the remainder back. And we are working with some employers or potential employers to eventually see if this can be something where they might fund students, or they may, you know, kind of pay it as a reimbursement. But that's going to take some time. Is the program able to transfer to graduate studies? It is a non-credit program currently. That being said, several of the individual courses within this, we have an articulation arrangement with UMUC, but it's at the undergraduate level. Jerome asked, how soon after application will we be notified? Once I get the applications in, I typically will gather them until I have, you know, a group of between 5 and 10 applicants. I'll review those. We'll have people come in for assessments. Those, you know, that are invited to come in for that. So typically, it depends on how many other people are applying, but typically within a week or so, maybe 2. That we would be able to get you in for assessments and, you know, potentially the interview and have the other process rolling. Let's see. So, question, are the lessons segmented in such a way that the certification exams are taken after a period of time, or are we to take the certifications on our own time? There's time built into the program, so there are break weeks where there's no classroom instruction that are designed for self-study, so for you to prepare for your certification exams and for you to actually go take them. Now, we are a test center as well, so you'll take your exams here in our site. But yes, there's time built in for the certification exams. So Ruth asks, is there going to be a part-time class for people who are unavailable to do this full-time? We don't have one planned currently. That being said, there are pieces of this program that are very similar that are available in some of our other certificate programs. For instance, I would invite you to take, if you're unable to do a daytime program, I would invite you to take a look at our evening certificate in cyber foundations and our evening certificate in cybersecurity, which have a lot of similar content to what's in this certificate in cyber operations. How many spaces available? We're looking to cap the classes at 20. We already have several applicants for this first offering. We do have slots available still, but it does, I would just point out to you that it does take a couple of weeks to process. So the sooner that you can get a pre-application in and get a resume and unofficial transcripts to us, the sooner we could get that process rolling to make sure that there's plenty of time. Some people have a variety of different forms of funding hurdles that they have to hop through. For instance, Veterans Administration benefits, GI Bill, or vocational rehab, or some people may be using some sort of funds through a workforce development office. So you're definitely going to want to allow time for that and for that paperwork to process. So Freddie asked, can you give me a rough estimate of salary if you're, for example, working for the government, just a starting salary to expect? I really don't know off the top of my head. I would say that someone going in for, actually my colleague here just pulled up, on the Department of Labor Licensing and Regulation, Computer Network Specialist Lead, starting salaries or salary range in the state of Maryland from about 48 to about 76. So that's non-government outside. If you're looking at government, it really depends on your grade, which brings into account if you have experience, if you have a degree. There's a lot of things that determine a grade. So I really would hesitate to give you numbers as far as going to work for the government, what a starting salary would be. What you could do though is take a look at like a GS or GG government pay scale, and typically you would be looking at an entry level position anywhere from maybe a GS or GG7 to a 9. Possibly an 11 if you've got a degree already. So it really depends. Jerome asks, is a bachelor's degree required? Could someone leaving high school do the program, or an associate's degree? The requirement is a high school diploma or above. Certainly, talking with the employers, there is desire from many employers for someone to hold a degree as well. But the employers kind of want everything. They want a degree, they want experience, they want this sort of technical training, they want the technical industry certifications, and it really depends on the organization. Many of the government agencies have the requirements for a bachelor's degree. A lot of private industry does not have that same requirement, and they're looking at your training and your experience. And certifications. So all of those categories, a high school graduate, someone holding an associate degree or a bachelor's degree would certainly be welcome in the program. Someone asked, when does the Cyber Foundation security classes begin, and what is the cost? How long does the evening class take to complete? I would point you at the website for the information to all of those. And the information is there. If you go to our main website, you can drill down in there to get to the data for each of the certificate programs, including the certificate in cyber operations. And it has the schedule in there as well, so it'll have the exact dates of when one is starting and when it's ending, and so you can see which evenings, how long each evening. All that information is on the website. Question, is the pacing of the lessons fixed for the entire class, or can somebody experienced in certain areas move ahead? That would be determined during the assessment process. If there are certain areas, or if you come in and you're like, hey, I already hold an A+, an F+, a Security+, then we would start you at the appropriate point in the program. So yes, there is the ability to bypass portions, provided that you have the requisite skill. And Ruth, thank you for posting the URL there. Any other questions? Freddie asked a question. I would recommend that you send me an email or come in and talk with me, because there's quite a few different areas that we would need to cover to answer your question appropriately. So my email address is on the screen currently, as well as the phone number. Feel free to give me a call or send me an email, or schedule time to come by and see the place and talk with us. Any other questions? Yeah, I see a couple of people are typing. So. So I've got a question. Can you tell us a bit more about this rapid accelerated learning? Rapid applied learning is basically it is the training that we put together here was designed specifically, like I mentioned, around what I was doing for years when I'm retired military. And I assisted the Army to grow their computer network operations force for my couple of years before I retired. And the concept there is that you're taking someone who's unfamiliar with this particular discipline, and through the combination of classroom lecture, hands-on lab exercises, sequencing of the correct topics at the correct times, meaning starting with what is a computer, how does it operate, what's inside, kind of an A+ sort of level of understanding of computers as a piece of hardware, but also learning about installing operating systems and doing basic configuration and that sort of thing. It's a combination of learning the theory and doing the hands-on practical application, then learning about the same thing about networking, then learning about information assurance principles and how that applies to both the hardware, to the software, to the networking. So it's really the combination of the theory, the theoretical aspects of each of the technologies, with a significant amount of hands-on practical application, sequenced appropriately so that you get that natural progression of skill development for a particular specialty, for a particular specialization. In this case, for someone doing cyber operations, or someone in the commercial space that would be doing penetration testing. Other places you may go to training, and there is no program that takes you from point A to point B and develops all of the variety of different skills that you need to be able to perform a function. So it's about getting to that point of being able to perform a function, having gone through all the requisite disciplines to get there, and reinforcing it all with the hands-on practical application. And then, as I mentioned, there will be a couple of times within this program where you may go through a course learning about hardware and architecture, and then about networking, basics of TCP/IP and how it works, and then about the basics of information assurance. And then there's going to be a hands-on exercise which requires you to perform functions that you learned in all three of those disciplines before you move on to, well, let me learn then about the Linux operating system, let me learn about routing and switching, let me learn about exploitation methodology, kind of the introduction to that. Then there may be another hands-on practical application that's comprehensive around those topics, plus the three that you learned before. And then you get into the real guts of the specialization with a final capstone, which ties all of that knowledge together and requires you to be able to perform a function using all of the knowledge that you learned throughout the entire program. That's the rapid applied learning concept, because it is a lot of material, a lot of information in a rapid time frame, and it is designed around developing skills for a particular type of activity. Hope that answers the question. For Linux, will we be using Backtrack? Actually, you'll be learning, you could be learning using, typically we use Red Hat to teach the user fundamentals. It could be Ubuntu as well, but to learn the user fundamentals, the basics of using Linux, and then learning how to do administration. Our Linux system administration course, while there is, we don't have the certification exam that you would take for like an RHCSA, it very well postures you and covers all the same material that you would need to be able to go take the Red Hat Certified System Administrator and pass it. Let's see. Freddie asked a question. How confident are you that someone with little or no experience can be successful after they leave your program into the real world? The experience that I have there is growing soldiers and Marines to do this over a period of about 5 years before I retired. And started from nothing with the Army, grew that force into before I took over before I gave up direct responsibility for the program, I had about 100 people in about 18 months. So, and then they continued to use this sort of concept until they developed an actual institutional course that DoD now uses to train service members. So I've seen it work. I've seen it work for dozens into more than 100 directly where I had personal responsibility for it. Let's see. Jerome, how can someone prepare for this program? Things to do to be successful, the aptitude tests, tiered assessments. Those are just measurement tools to see where you are. Certainly there are things you can do ahead of time. Things like Khan Academy, if you're familiar with Khan Academy. It's KhanAcademy. If you Google search for that, Khan Academy is it's an online place where you can go, and it has short videos that cover a variety of things, but they have some really good ones for IT, for cybersecurity, for penetration testing, where you can go in and you can watch a short video that instructs you, step by step how to do something. And it can be for basic things that you're going to learn in this program, like how do I do decimal to binary number conversions, because you're going to have to be able to do that to perform certain things that you do in this field, like subnetting, for instance. And there's videos that you can go to. There's also, I tend to like the O'Reilly series of technical books, dealing with networking, dealing with hardware, dealing with Linux, dealing with a variety of these topics that we're going to cover in the program. Things that you can read ahead on, and you can get them at a bookstore. A lot of times you can get them from a public library. So there's a lot of things that you can do ahead of time to kind of start getting yourself prepared. Let's see. Someone asked, what's the job opportunity of IT security compared to other IT specializations? Let's say database administration. I'd say it's pretty good. I mean, I can't give you anything more than anecdotal evidence on that, but you can't turn on a television or a radio or go to websites anymore without seeing cybersecurity. Cybersecurity. And if you look even within higher education, the new programs are focused around cybersecurity. I would say that it's you figure that information technology is in every industry now, and going into more depth and into lower levels of things, even like education now. Well, the security aspects and security nature of things is becoming more and more of a focus area because of the nature of the fact that we have the information out there, we're connected to a network, we're connected to the internet, we need to be able to secure our information and our data. So it's definitely a hot item, hot topic, and I can't see that changing anytime soon, because we're only going to get more and more connected as time goes on. Andy asks, for the hardware and computer architecture, did you mean just basic computer parts? For the hardware and architecture, and for actually a couple of different components of this, where there is an existing industry course, and in many cases an industry certification course, we'll use that or some slightly tailored version. So for the actual hardware and computer architecture piece, we're doing the hands-on, the practicum version of the A+ course. So you're learning, the guts of what's in a computer. You're learning, how to take it apart, how to put it back together, how to install an operating system, how to configure it, how to connect it to a network, what all the pieces are, how they operate, how they interoperate, and how to troubleshoot. Freddie asked, I recall you saying this is an intense program. That doesn't mean it's a difficult program. Is it just curious? Portions of it can be difficult. It depends, and it depends on the individual. By intense, I meant a lot of information and a lot of different topics covered during the course of the program. So, you've really got to be able to focus on this program. You've got to be able to do some reading in the evenings. You got to be able to do some self-study, bit of research occasionally. So there's going to be some out of classroom time as well. So that's what I would say makes it intense, is that you've got to really be focused on the material because it's a lot to cover. So Jerome asks, are you eligible to take the A+ cert as well? You can take it. It is not included as part of the program. You would be well prepared to take it. Any other questions? Any other areas? I would invite you all to go to the website if you haven't been there already. Look at the information. The pre-application is there, the instructions, and like I say, my information is on the screen. Feel free to give me a call or send me an email, and I'll either get you the information or point you to it if it's on the web. So if there are no further questions, give you a second. See if anybody has anything additional. Application deadline. So we would like to have, for participants in this webinar, we would like to have the applications in by the 24th to give us time to process and then get through the assessments